Hello coaches and welcome to this live Give and Go presentation. My name's David Newberry and I'm joined today by two special guests. Firstly, Charlie Slagle, the president of United Soccer Coaches Board and also the CEO of the Tampa Bay United Rowdies Soccer Club, and also Ian Barker, Director of Coaching Education. Hi gents, how are you?
I'm great.
Very good, thank you David, pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So let's go to today's activity, and Charlie has chosen an activity called Shooting Tight Space Give and Go, and this is an activity that previously appeared in the Attacking Principles of Play session. So Charlie, let's get started.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, David Newberry and Ian Barker. And I guess on a copy of Give and Go, it'd be good to talk about a Give and Go. And one of the things, Give and Go is a 2v1 activity. And make sure, coaches, that you realize that a 2v1 activity always starts with 1v1. If a player is not very good at 1v1 or doesn't actually look like they are going to take somebody on, it makes it much more difficult. However, if they do, it will enhance both their one-on-one and their 2v1. So therefore, make sure that you're working with the 1v1 as much as you are with the 2v1 in this give and go situation. So what I have here is we have the players, and there's three of them. And the way we have it lined up right now, you've got the player number one who gets the ball here, goes this way, and then he comes and takes the shot there. Gets the pass from here to here to the give and go person and then back. And there's a couple ways. Right now you have it as a weave, but you could have number one player do it all the time. And I recommend that you have a cone or a human, an injured player, a parent, or somebody like that there, and make sure that it isn't tight. You get guys on the outside of the field and they might have a longer give and go, but this player has to attack hard first, just like he's going 1v1 versus the defender, and then make the pass. So Ian or David, can you talk about that, how important it is that the 1v1 is part of the 2v1?
Sure. So in a fundamental stage like this, we don't do the activity opposed. This is very much the fundamental stage. But as Charlie's suggesting, for realism, so this give and go has some accuracy and detail, you put a cone in here, or a mannequin, or indeed some sort of object that the players are executing the give and go around. But very quickly, that defender, that opposition needs to become somewhat active. So although there are two attackers, if you will, the give and the go, it's really a 1v1. So you establish that 1v1 by layering the pressure after this fundamental stage.
And another thing here, as you're doing this, on this pass that you're seeing right here, the very first pass, you want to get that ball to the passer. I'll call the worker number one and the passer is number two. And you want to get that ball to that player as quickly as possible. And so you want to make sure that that player that is working, number one, is getting that ball. And more than likely from this angle, it would be the outside of the left foot to the forward foot of number two. And then a one-touch pass from number two back to number one is right there. And then you have the shot, which we have it listed as going to the back post. Goalkeepers tend to stay on the near post because they train that way. And so you're looking for the ball to the back post.
Charlie, can you talk about the significance of the cones that are just inside the goal at both ends?
Right. You obviously have a goalkeeper normally in there. And what happens is with the goalkeeper, the only spots that should be open are on the outsides. And this doesn't depend on how old the players are. You just have only a part of the goal that you can shoot at. So we're trying to get the player to put it into a position. And as a coach, you can't just have them pass it in because we're trying to score goals. So we want them to score the goal like they would in a regular game because later on we're going to put a goalkeeper in there. And then the other thing is as tight as possible to get these passes to each other, I think is very important also. So you get the first pass as quickly as you possibly can to here, and then a one touch back to here, and then a one or two touch on the shot. And that is very important. And if you're only using one player instead of the weave, then that player then turns around and does it the other direction. So they're using both their right and left foot. And you might want to go for a minute at a time and see how many shots the player gets off, how many successful shots the player gets off.
Thanks, Charlie. And we have a question from John. Asks, is this activity one that I can do with all my players or just the attacking players?
Give and goes happen all over the field. And this is right now a tight give and go, but they happen all over the field. So the learning process is good for everyone on the field to know what they're going to do.
Excellent. Let's go now to diagram number 2, and the weave is now going back in the other direction.
Right, and so now what you have is player number 2 then passes to player 3, and then the ball comes back. And what you're getting is the same thing that you had before. Is the pass has to be a good one here. In this angle, outside of the right foot is the quickest and the best pass there, because if you hit it with your left foot across your body, that gives the defender more time to get it. Then the pass here, if it's passed to the front foot, in this case, the right foot of number 3, and then the pass comes back to number 2. And once again, of course, on the give and go, if you have a cone out there, you have a human out there, you have a mannequin out there, the pass goes on one side of the defender, and the run, which is right here, goes on the opposite side of the defender, so the defender cannot see the ball and the player at the same time. Here, finish to the back post, and you see it right there.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about some of the methods here on this particular sequence.
Yeah, what you want to make sure as you're setting this up is that you have the players knowing where they're going to go, how they're going to switch, and also have plenty of balls. And once again, you could use injured players or a parent if you're in youth soccer or whatever to make sure you keep those balls moving, because you want this done as quickly as possible. And you also don't want the player to, if he gets the opportunity, to take too much time to take those shots. And if it's a bad pass, go finish that, because you have now ruined it. Now you have to slow down and do it again. And I think the more that you really push those players to do that, the better off you're going to be.
Thanks, Charlie. I have a question here for Ian from Andreas. He says, I have 16 players on my team. What will I do with the other 13 players while the 3 are working?
That's a great question. I think you're going to see here in a second that we'll layer in some more players so we can actually have groups going back and forth through the goals. But what I might consider doing is have one group of, let's say, 8 players doing a possession activity, playing a small-sided 4v4 game, and then I, as the coach, would be concentrating on this activity with 6 to 8 players when we go both ways, and then flip the groups. So sometimes as coaches, we try to cram all of the kids into a single activity, and I would actually run 2 stations, and it could be 2 stations of the same activity, or it could be one station is simply just a small-sided game, and then the other station is my primary station. So just a little bit of creativity, and of course, trust that your kids can work independently when you've got your back turned to them.
Great. Let's go to the third sequence, Charlie.
Yes, and if I can add to what Ian just said, there's a good way to make this into a situation where you can use about 7 players plus a goalkeeper, so 8 players of your 16. And what you would do is you'd have a player who would start, who is the working player, number 1, and have another player behind them. And then you have a defender who stands in there, and then you also have a receiver who then passes the ball. And at the other end, somebody to start going the other direction. With 7 players, you then can go back to the rotate from one position to the other. And by that time, 7 players can do continuous, and you can do 3, 4, 5 minutes or whatever you have to do. So ask your question again there, David.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Charlie. Let's go to the third sequence now. And now we have 2 groups working at the same time.
Right. We have 2 groups working at the same time. And what you want to do is see how many shots they can get off. Also, how many successful goals they have. And as you see, you have the goalkeepers at both ends. And so now you don't have to actually get the ball by the post and the cone, what you want to do is actually score goals. So if a goalkeeper is cheating one way to the back post, obviously you can finish it on any direction you want. But what you now have is competition. And here are about, you can have as many as, if you do the rotation, you could have as many as 7 players in each of these groups. And then you have the players going only one shot pretty much at a time if you start differently, and you have a team competition. So here you have a player who does the give and go right here, and then the ball comes back, and the ball comes back and tries to finish. While at this other end, you have the same thing happening where the ball comes back to here and shooting at this goal. And then they rotate and go back the other direction. And when they do that, you now have a good competitive situation of both small space give and goes. You have the pressure of time and space with the time, if you're going to go for a certain number of minutes and see how many goals they score. So anything that goes a little bit wrong, or they take too much time, they won't get as many opportunities as maybe the group in red.
And we have a comment in from Giselle, and I think many of us as coaches will have to deal with this, where the player will try to take every shot on their predominant foot, their dominant foot. Can you just talk a little bit about how you would work a player on their weak side, on their weak foot?
Right. Well, first of all, you talk about it, but the quicker you get a shot off, let's look at the player 2 here in the yellow. And say right-footed player, and you want him to take the shot left-footed. You also, as player is going, as you see, the angle that the player is going is to the outside. The goalkeeper will move a little bit in that direction. So the idea is, even if the shot isn't as good with this foot, the goalkeeper is not set as well. If you move it to your other foot, then the goalkeeper is set. Defenders, which aren't in this game or this training session, will catch up, and it'll make it a much more difficult shot. So if you can emphasize how important it is to get the shot off quickly with the foot that it happens to be on, and then, well, coach, I don't do that very well. Well, that's a good thing for you to practice, because you're going to be in this situation. If you decide to take the right-footed shot instead, you'll probably be much less successful than you are if you get better at hitting it with your left foot.
And Ian, just before we go to the final slide, the methodology slide, one of the things that looks really quite a simple activity can become quite technical and complex. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Sure. So what I like about the way Charlie's progressing here is we started off with no pressure whatsoever, and really we're just requiring and demanding that the kids keep it tight. Now you've added in an opposed team, but they're not actually trying to steal the ball, but there's a lot more confusion. So you've created pressure and stress for the players by having more moving parts, but you still haven't got to the level yet where people are actually physically trying to dispossess you. So this is how we layer in the degrees of complexity. And if I was working with 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, I would certainly go completely unopposed, somewhat confusing, and then with the opposition. So I think this is really good for especially youth development.
Thanks, Ian.
Right, and as old as players are getting, you can add a little bit more, as Ian said, with a defender in the middle, maybe some pressure after the reception of the just before the shot. And so you could do this with older players as well. But once again, the coach has to be there to make sure that they're doing it quickly. They're getting the most out of this, and make it even tighter for these players, because you see, if you're watching the pro leagues, that the in tight give and go is something that can spring some players. And with that, you are going to see the many players who get an opportunity on goal. So as Ian said, you can do this with the younger players, but you also can work up the ladder. You just put a little bit more pressure on them, either time-wise or defender time or space-wise.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for this is a fantastic activity for any coach that is working this evening with their players and they want to work on a shooting activity. I love this activity. My players love it. Plenty of repetitions. And of course, the other group that we haven't really talked too much about is the benefit for the goalkeepers, who get a lot of repetitions out of this activity as well. So any concluding comments first from you, Ian?
No, I hope people take an opportunity to try this one out and give it some time to get settled in, because once the players get in the flow, the high intensity, high frequency, add in the goalkeepers, a lot of enjoyment to be had.
Great. Charlie, anything from you?
Yeah, I said it at the beginning, and maybe I've explained it, how important the 1v1 is. When you're doing this, if the defender doesn't think that you're going to try to beat them, then a 2v1 with this give and go is easy to stop. However, if you're coming at this player, having a give and go option makes your 1v1 better. And also having the option obviously makes the 2v1 better. But you have to attack that player at speed. Get that pass off quickly, or you can step over the ball on the pass instead of passing and then just blow by the player and you got the one-on-one. So they both enhance each other by making sure that it looks like a 1v1 at all times, and then it becomes a 2v1.
Well, thank you, Charlie Slagle, President of the Board of Directors for United Soccer Coaches, for sharing this activity with us. And that's all we have time for today. So please tune in to the next Give and Go.